Hello, everybody. It's me and Tacita live.
Hello.
I can't, there are so many ways to communicate now, or so many ways to like share information that I'm glad that we are trying to help a little bit with communication because there's new ways
It's
to make mistakes.
there's always new ways to make mistakes.
True.
There's new record keeping to those mistakes. They happen all over the place. Yeah, communication. It is hard. It's hard not to make mistakes. It's hard to know when to communicate and what to communicate about in the right way. It's
At the
noisy
right time
at the right time about the right thing.
and in the right tone. I'm not talking about tone police. I mean, like,
Accessible.
right.
If you don't communicate the thought in an accessible way, it's not worth communicating. It could make more problems for you. And so you have to find that it's like, how am I effectively actually communicating my message to this human that is not me? And they
That's
might hear my words differently. They've got their whole entire universe that's going on with them. How do I make sure that they actually hear what I'm saying and we're on the same page?
and generationally on how one thing that's funny, in case people don't know, I'm Jackye Clayton. I'm the VP of Talent Acquisition and Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging here at Textio. And who are you, Tacita?
I am Tacita Morway. I am the CTO for Textio. Less words.
No, I've got a lot of them. I'm trying to reduce it to VP of winning. I'm starting the
I
campaign.
feel like I believe that this can happen.
Because I love winning. And it's like, I just want to jump in. Let's see where we can win. As long as I feel like we can win. I'm fully there.
Yeah, and we
And I
can.
feel like the things that we do really, I don't think we work at Textio. So we know we're inside and we see all the mechanics, you especially. But I really feel like we're making a change in the world of work because there are things that I love about working here that I know like I can be, fully myself. And if I do make a gaffe, someone will call me on it and we can have a discussion about it. Um, but I know that there are so many people that don't have
Yeah.
access to tools to help. And it's okay to get a little help.
Yeah, it's okay to get a little help, and it's needed because it's really hard. You're like, especially in the work environment where you don't know what kind of your relationship with everybody is going to be really different. You don't know what's going on with those other people. You're carrying your own stresses, your own distractions, your own everything. So it seems very reasonable to need some help in sort of thinking through that communication, thinking through your interactions. And the workday doesn't give us much space to think about that and to invest in that and take care and time with that. And in some organizations, there's a lot of pressure to not care about those things. So having some systems that help feels like a very healthy uh, support system to try and get in place.
I like that word, healthy. That's a good way of describing it. Healthy. And as someone, it's no big secret. I have ADHD. One of the things that is a like survival mechanism for me is when I get high stress, my words get shorter. My sentences will get really short, and I no longer know how to communicate. And to the point where if it's really stressful, I might just make a noise and not make a sentence at all.
Sometimes it's just your face.
Sometimes, yeah, I don't even get to the noise.
Yeah,
Where I'm just like,
I've seen that.
you have seen it. It lasts for a long time. Like I full bug catcher. And I always say, if I'm going to get fired, it will be on Slack because I said something short and choppy and rude, not because of anything, not because of saying too much, but because of not saying enough. And probably will be a full sentence. It'll probably be no. And that'll be the end of it because it's difficult in putting those things together. And I know that you've been working a lot on our feedback tool, what do you think people get wrong the most? What have you seen kind of like as you've been working on it and making decisions on it, what should be the next step? What do you think people need help the most with?
There's two things come to mind. One is landing your feedback as you actually meant it. Like, actually, like if you think you're giving critical feedback to someone, you're like, I did the hard thing. All right. I told them that they like really need to be showing up to meetings on time, and that if not, it's going to be a big problem. And you can, because it can be so uncomfortable and scary to give adjusting or critical feedback, it can feel to us like we did a really big thing. Like, oof, wow, we came out harsh on that. And the recipient may take that as like way softer, like, oh, okay, I'll try and keep an eye on that thing, but not that there's going to be like that this is a really big important thing that I have to come back to, I have to think about. I don't know what the new behaviors I'm being asked of. I just got sort of feedback on behavior I'm doing, so I'll just think about that instead of targeting some new behavior. Our feedback can land so fuzzy and soft that it doesn't actually do anything except stress us out to deliver it, because it's not having impact on the person we're trying to communicate with. So having your feedback land the way you actually intend it is, we hear people have such challenges with that. Or like you can do the testing of like, okay, this group of people said X, Y, and Z, and did the recipient hear it as X, Y, and Z? A lot of times, no. And so you can just like look at that evidence out there and see how hard that is. So that's problem number one, is having it land. Problem number two is actually giving it. People are so dread those hard conversations, or even whether it's a critical feedback or positive feedback. Even that, people can get uncomfortable with that, or like, this is patronizing for me to be like, good job. There's so many hesitations around actually expressing feedback. So people don't think to give it at all. Also, none of us got time to think about all those things. Right. We're really busy. So you're just like going about your business in the rest of the world, and to stop and think, oh, it's really going to make a big difference in some way for me to share this with that person, takes time. And now you have to commit to actually carving out the time to think about how you would do that, having the actual conversation, then hoping it goes well. And then do you need to come back and revisit it to make sure like something's happening from that feedback you shared? So people just like tap out. No, I'm actually just going to go to the next Slack fire over here, and not, things are fine enough, we can get by. So people just won't even, they'll just avoid giving the feedback at all. Those are two like top things that come to mind.
I appreciate you sharing that. Nobody wants to give bad news or bad feedback, especially when you genuinely need the person to follow through on something and you don't want to hurt their feelings, but it's really not working well on what's happening. It's not working. And one of the things that I love that we call out with the Textio tool is hedging, because hedging meaning like you're not committing. You'll say things like, I think, perhaps,
maybe,
allegedly, potentially,
consider.
And it is one of the worst things for me. Again, I have ADHD, I'm not neurotypical. And so if I get a choice, because things are difficult to manage sometimes, I will opt out almost every time. Like, just because my brain is always going and there's always so much to do. So an example would be like, if somebody says to me, do you think that you need to clean your room? And I'll be like, no. And I'm done.
Totally, no, just fine.
I don't think that. And later, because I didn't get diagnosed until I was older. And so I started saying to people, is there a way that you think I should be thinking about this? Because I've masked it so well that you might not know that I really don't know what you're talking about right now. And I think we don't even see or consider, how does that show up? How does not poor communication and bad feedback show up in the workplace and manifest itself in its work? How much of it is poor management not knowing how to give good feedback versus an employee not being able to have the skills? Like, how much of it is like not them not knowing what to do in the first place?
Yeah. And Well, actually what you just said, it starts actually at the job description. The first moment that you engage with this person and figured out like, hey, this is what we think the job is. Is that of interest to you? Great. Okay, come on in. Now we need like what you would want to have in the ideal situation is now you're coaching to that. You're giving feedback on a regular basis to that job description, to what's expected of this person in their role. And that's the thing that just like falls to the wayside so quickly. And like as managers, we forget what the job description is ourselves. The person starts growing and building new skills. So now like maybe it doesn't even map so much to that first job description anymore. Maybe they don't have an updated one because they've gotten promotions. And so you're not thinking to actually give feedback to what's important to this person, let alone thinking that it's worth your time. Because again, most feedback comes right now. When I was talking about people not, one of the problems is that people don't give the feedback. That's why you have these HR processes in place to make sure like once a year you're having that performance review. And so you're doing the thing, you can check the box. That's not when the feedback's needed. It's not when there's like anticipating a problem, trying to fend off a potential future problem, or when there's actually been growth. And in that moment when the growth is happening, recognizing that, acknowledging, be like, yeah, more of this. This is awesome. Instead, we wait for these processes to tell us to do that. And almost because those processes are in place, we have an excuse to not give feedback in the moment that's timely and relevant. And it means that we're not holding ourselves accountable to coaching people to what they should be doing and giving them that sort of constant guidance and support.
I think what you're saying is so true. Should we get our boss on? I think we should we call our boss? Maybe now's not a good time. I will tell you, one of my favorite moments of having with the manager was with Kieran Snyder, our scientist emeritus, and I made a mistake, and Kieran was like, "Okay, now I'm going to give you feedback," and I really don't feel comfortable, but I have to. Because statistically it says that I won't give you the feedback and I'm going to give you the feedback. And I was like, which makes me feel like I should want the feedback, but I don't.
But now I'm going to throw up all over the place. Thanks.
Right. I was like, please don't give me the feedback. Like, can we just pass through? And it's like, no. And after we had the conversation and had the feedback, I realized, gosh, I think I've needed that feedback for a really long time. And that can be the hardest thing, like of being able to take the feedback. Now that we're teaching people how to receive the feedback, we need to teach people how to accept the feedback. I will tell you, my dad told me the only proper response to feedback is thank you. So you can tell it was really laid back in my house. Everybody had a voice.
Super casual, chill, comfortable.
Yeah. The only proper, and they were like, write it down and go talk to a friend about it to see if it's actually true. Because I mean, some of the things I feel really defensive. It's hard to hear feedback, especially if it's not clear or you disagree with it. And both things can be true, or the opposite. It might seem like I don't care, but actually I care a lot. And I was up until 3:00 in the morning and fell asleep and didn't get it done. Not because I didn't care. It's like.
I think you just said too about it's hard to hear the feedback. We don't, because there is such hesitation around giving feedback, we don't get a lot of practice actually receiving.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And so like when you have a regular practice of like, yeah, okay, you're going to hear from me a pretty regular drumbeat. Like I definitely, I feel at this for sure. I try not to, but I do. But especially, so we don't help people get comfortable receiving feedback because we don't give it frequently enough. And the whole other thought just fell out of my head. A child came in downstairs and 5 things just fell that I heard. So I was worrying about whatever just broke.
It was about receiving feedback. We don't get a lot of practice receiving feedback. And so we don't receive it very well when people are giving us feedback.
We don't receive it very well. Yep, maybe it'll come back to me later.
But we also don't have a lot of practice giving it if we are allowed to hide. I mean, you had a much larger team than I did. I gave feedback every week, but then realized really, literally, seriously, from our tool about it not being actionable, that I wasn't giving good feedback. I didn't realize that I wasn't giving good feedback that was actionable. Did your thought come back?
No, it didn't.
Dang.
At all. And the thing that I found really helpful with the tool is the helping you make it just clearer or just direct, because I will wax poetic. And I'll be like, blah, 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 like 50,000 words that nobody should ever say out loud because it's way too many words. As someone who doesn't like writing, you would think that I didn't do that, but I write way too much. And Textio's always like, that's so cute. Here's how, this is actually what you're trying to say.
Right.
And like, it can just like distill it down. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's clear. That's going to land versus all of this like other stuff that I thought was helpful information. And it doesn't, somebody used to say to me, like, sorry, that email was so long. I didn't have time to write something shorter. And that's kind of what it's like for me. Like, I don't have time. It takes time to distill your thought to like the core essence of what's important. And I really love you to click that button and be like, yes, simplify that complex thing for me. Take my rough brain dump of words that I can do really quickly and make it actually like palatable, consumable to somebody that's not me. Oh, it's so nice.
I keep going outside. Yesterday I had a bird, and
yes, you did.
Today I was worried that squirrel was going to come in because it is finally sweater weather here in Waco. So sorry if I was distracted. I was like, oh, please. my office is about to be, I just wanted fresh air. No, I can appreciate what you're saying. I do love generative AI for the ability of saying, can you shorten this? Or this is what I'd like to say. Or recently there was, it was making a suggestion. We did strength finders. And so my top strength was competition. And so I was trying to distill all the things that I could find about it into one little piece. And it came to like, it was like 4 different articles, and it came back and said, oh, well, you're just competitive and like to compete. I'm like, thanks. If it really said that, I'm not sure. Or if it said the same thing I did, like, this is too long and I'm not going to read it. But go ahead.
I was going to say the thing you're saying about like being able to go to like use the available AI that's out there to help like make things shorter and distill them. The thing, going back to our tool, because of course we're at Textio, what's really helpful is when the system you're interacting with actually knows what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Like Textio knows I'm there to write feedback. And so it knows how to do that well, instead of just being like, so it's not just making it shorter, it's making it shorter, knowing what good feedback looks like. So it's making it more effective for my actual intended purpose.
Right.
And that's what takes the time out for me. Because like when, like before we had built our stuff and it was like testing things out and available like platforms that are out there, I was like, okay, yeah, you made that shorter, but it is not more reflective of my thoughts. It's not more effective in getting my ideas across, because you know how to make it concise, but they don't necessarily know how to make it actionable and clear and direct.
That is so funny. Like, they can literally cut 5 words if you want. They can just pick 5 and be like, it's shorter.
Yeah, it's shorter. Exactly. Exactly.
I love that. I didn't know until researching it more about like the history of what we do at Textio, but then looking at the very specifics of learning it. And it was something that, because I'm also a customer, not just the hair club president, I'm a customer. But when people always said, oh, it's for job descriptions, it's only for job descriptions. And I was like, yeah, but I used it for this other thing. And someone was saying, it's only for job descriptions. And I would remember getting so frustrated because I was like, what are you trying to tell me? What do you mean it was built for job descriptions? And I didn't really understand, like, no, because you wouldn't talk the same way in life as you would if you were writing a job description. Similarly, you might have a casual tone, but not that casual if it's giving somebody feedback.
That's right.
And is there any language that you think, like what you just mentioned, one talking about the length of your sentences being, it has to still know what you're talking about. Any other examples that come to top of mind? I mean, the next thing that comes to mind is like some things are harmful versus discriminatory, but at work that means something different than it means in the regular outside of work world. I won't say normal
Right.
world or regular world, outside of work communication.
Well, you brought one up earlier, right? Hedging.
Mm.
That's really problematic when it comes to feedback. And you go out to Perplexity or Gemini or to any of those systems out there, they don't know to take that kind of language out. So you're not going to get that sort of specific guidance that's helping you write feedback that's actually going to land results and is actually going to be supportive of the person you're talking to. Because you're going to have these hedging things in there, and like that hurts high performers or hurts people who are struggling. Like, so there's just so many nuances to the way you write when you're trying to write feedback that ChatGPT just doesn't know about. Is that what you're meaning? Did I answer your question?
No, that is what I meant. But I also think the way that we were taught has always been incorrect. Like it always talked about the feedback sandwich, like put something bad between two good things. And, majority of people interpret that to say, you have pretty hair, you're really bad at Excel, but I like your shoes. Like,
Yeah.
that's supposed to help without realizing, no, you can still make it about work and find sometimes the things that you want them to improve is still positive, even though it's asking to make a change.
Yep.
Right? Like, I love your spreadsheet. I think it's great. Instead of once, I would love to see it twice. Like, woohoo, but that's not necessarily positive. It's not like saying, it's not a compliment necessarily. You might not always be received as a compliment. But it's not negative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like it's not completely negative where you would have to have those kinds of sandwiches. The communication sandwich doesn't mean that everything is super, super, there's no work and you just have to say, you're great or you're doing a good job.
You know how I used to say I whisper yell?
Uh-huh.
Like, I think Cass is whisper yelling again.
Yeah.
It was such a good, like, I had heard along my career at some points that, like, I thought I was giving feedback all the time. I was like, there's not a single conversation that goes by that I'm not giving feedback. And I was getting feedback myself during, like, when it comes to yearly review time, like, I would really like more feedback from Tessa. She's not giving me any feedback. I'm like, oh, I'm not letting people know. I'm sort of thought partnering with people, and in my brain, that's feedback. And in their experience of it, it's just like, oh, we're thought partnering on this thing. And so I've had to work really hard to get more explicit and like catching myself like, no, I need to make it clear right now that this is a reflection that I want them to hear and understand about what they're doing that's like super valuable and good and why, or what needs to change and why. And just like you were saying, like Kieran saying to you, I have some feedback to give you now. It's like, okay, bracing myself. And again, like having tools that can help you with those things, it can help catch for you. It like helps. For me, that's a problem that goes away when I get to turn to Textio, because it's like it'll very immediately fix the fact that I've done not feedback sandwiches, but just things are like too fluffy, too soft, not clear enough.
You have any other examples of bad feedback that you've ever gotten?
Oh my gosh. I got, you're too quiet, talk louder. That was a good one. I was like my voice is too quiet. How does that work? I got feedback that I needed to show my tattoos more. That was a good one. Liked
What
that.
are you talking about? Was it at a tattoo parlor? I don't understand.
It was a tech company, and the idea was that was gonna illustrate like show that we as a company were cool and hip, I have no idea. But that was actual feedback I got. Most of the like early years of my career, it was like, you're so nice to have on the team. You're always so happy. And I'm like, no, I'm good at smiling. I'm really good at bringing my smile. That does not make me happy. And that has no bearing on the level of scalability or maintainability or security of the code I'm writing for you. But
That's
I'm
right.
glad you think I'm happy. Cool. And do I get promoted by becoming happier?
No.
What do I do with this?
Get paid per click. I used to always say, can I just write a paid per click blog post? I wish I could get paid per click. Maybe like you could get paid per smile.
Yeah.
I got feedback once that they appreciated conference Jackye. They wanted conference Jackye at work all the time.
Oh, that's nice. Nice. I would like the performance version of you and not the
Right.
real you. Can you just check yourself at the door? And that'd be great
Right.
for us.
And it's like, actually, I could only do that once a month. I need a full stage and some snacks. Like it doesn't just, I mean, you don't just do that. And it was hard for me to understand what that was. And while all of that incorporated, because that's not normal. That's like telling Oprah, oh, I like Oprah like on TV. That's not normal conversation. It's still me. And it wasn't like a different person at all. It was, but it's like, oh, so you want us to have meetings where I just talk for an hour and you listen? No.
Nope.
You wouldn't want
That's
that
not,
either.
you're not actually wanting to sign up for that.
Right.
I think that goes to the thing of like giving feedback that's actually relevant. Like a lot of the bad feedback I've gotten has just been completely irrelevant and not actually reflective of the job I'm in and that I should be held accountable to, or what they actually need of me. And it's just that I get a lot of feedback early days of like, oh, you're really going above and beyond and like filling in the gaps for your colleagues. Like, that's great. And I'm like, I feel like that's misdirected feedback. That might be feedback for my colleagues.
Right.
Like, maybe I shouldn't go above and beyond in this because I'm going to burn myself out and then I'm going to be nothing to you. Maybe that's the feedback I need to be getting. So it wasn't actually relevant to the issue at hand. It was just like a reflection of what they appreciated, which is not what's important to the business, not important to the company. And I think that a place that feedback can misfire is when it's not aligned to what's important to the company, important to the team, important to your goals. And it's just a reflection. That's where the bias can creep in. The sort of like, this is my personal flavor and opinion of what I've noticed and want to remark on your behalf, versus this is what the company needs. And here's how you're fitting or not fitting into that need.
Oof. That's deep. This is what we need, and this is what you're not giving.
This is
I feel that I have a tendency to like to have my hand in multiple things, trying to do multiple things, and one of the things that is always important is me understanding feedback, but then other people understanding what feedback they're getting, so that we can all work together. And it also can help prevent. We've all had meetings where the boss had a conversation with everybody in the meeting, and everyone in the meeting thought that he or she or they were talking about them. It's like,
yeah.
I wasn't talking about you. And I was like, I don't know how to stay in my own lane. I don't know how to color in the lines. I don't know how to not cross over and like insert myself. I don't know what that is. I'll talk to my therapist about it, but were you talking about me? And they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Oh, I'm so vain. I thought that conversation was about me. But I feel like, when we see all of these things with with AI, I'm glad to see that we are getting real specific with the feedback because, or getting really specific. And we're not just like, we're doing this purposefully because there's so many directions you could go. And there's like we're talking about right now, there's so many ways of getting that wrong. And some that are really, really problematic and like stepping into really getting out of the lane. And that's what you see
Right.
when you're looking at like business feedback. A lot of times the mistakes are when people try to get too personal. And that's another way of hedging that that it's problematic, but you don't recognize like you're hedging. So you're trying to like deflect and talk about the person. But when we look at it outside of context, it just looks cringy on like,
Yep.
why are you talking about the person's clothes? Or why are you talking about the person's hairstyle? Or, you know,
Or the trauma they experienced this year that they've had to navigate while doing their job. Like there's, you can get personal in so many different ways. It's like not your place.
right. And especially when you're documenting, all of these things should be documented, you know, or if you don't document feedback and performance reviews when you have them, then they don't happen. And I think that is a big one. What other things do you think, you know, we're looking at helping managers do less? And we've talked about like do less. And in the world of technology, working at an HR tech company and other software companies, we know the dream is that so many things can be automated. What is another like administrative task that you think needs to be, or we should consider automating?
It's not an administrative task, but it is a critical task. And that is finding where your attention should be.
Ooh,
Like there are so many things that we capture, and like whether you're using Notion or Google, whatever their system is, you're capturing all this noise signal, you're taking notes throughout your day, you've got stickies on your laptop, computer, and you're marking things in Slack to come back to later. There's this like whole chaotic bucket of noise that we live in. Where do you turn your attention to? How do you not live in a reactive place and actually turn your attention to the right thing at the right time? So it's not an administrative task, but it's a critical task of keeping focus on what's important and acting on that, communicating about that, letting that show up in your one-on-ones and your feedback and wherever it is, so that you're really investing in what's important instead of investing all of our time in just the fires and just what's able to get our attention. That spreads us thin. It dilutes our impact for our companies. It drains us of energy because we're trying to like hold all of this in our like cognitive memory banks. It's just like a lot of noise. So that task of like, there's actually only these 4 things that I have to care about, and the rest of it's noise, and I have to be okay saying no or tagging somebody in to tackle those things. That's a task I wanna fix.
yes, please.
Yeah, I'm on it. We're on it. We're doing it. We got drawings already.
I think that that's so important. And also, you remind me, like in DEIB training, when we're giving it, you know, talking about it, one of the tenets that we have is that we're not going to solve it today. We might not solve it today. Because sometimes you can have contentious things that are going on and people want to keep talking about it, but we have to move on. And we might not solve it in this room today. But I love that, you know, these other things are still important. This is still where the focus is, and we might not be able to get to that. And you do have to be all right with those. I also wish there was a tool that could help us when we're taking on too much.
Mm-hmm.
Can you add that part too?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like, I want the tool that makes it a lot easier to just take on the right things.
Right.
And it can alert you, like the that thing of like telling people it's a lot more effective to say what you want to see, and not like you tell a kid, stay on the sidewalk is very different than telling them to stay out of the street. You say, don't go in the street. They're gonna be like, that's so funny and cute. Bye-bye. I'm crossing the street right now. And you say, like, stay in the like, so if you, the same way with like what to focus on, just focus on these things, and everything else is like, you don't even have to put effort into saying no to that, or at least it's less effort. Still emotionally hard because we all want to say yes and do all the things and help and all that, but it's a lot easier to just say yes to the right things. So just want to give that heat map. Here's the view. Here's the compass. Like, here's what to head towards. Just like tackle this, and the rest of it, like, let it get forgotten.
I think, yeah, I'll be excited for that. I also think, again, as a DEIB practitioner, you've heard the statement, like, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I have more than just those skills, but everything seems like a way of being inclusive. I don't think people recognize how we talk about, oh, you get good feedback or don't get good feedback. You're a high performer, you're a man, you're a woman, you're an executive, all of these different things. But we fail to say there are people living in fear because they have no idea of what they're doing is at work, and how much better could they be if they weren't wasting energy thinking that they're doing the wrong thing? Or how much innovation could we have if people weren't afraid of sharing ideas? Or considered. I think one of the things I noticed, and again, from not getting diagnosed with ADHD until I was much older, it was manifesting in different ways that I didn't know. There are people in our workplaces that are going through things that are none of our business that we don't know, but there's some things that the people we work with don't know. That is something going through, and there's no accommodation, and we're because they don't know that they need an accommodation. And just being clear. And again, it's learning the expectation, it's getting that. And then it's difficult. We don't recognize these are things culturally that sometimes are different. You might get cultural lessons where it's like, oh, I'm only going to be, Stanley Sunshine, or, in trying to figure out what is going to be key for us to work on. And then we're asked to give our evaluation of ourselves, but we don't want to brag, maybe, or I don't like talking about myself, or I don't know how to do that as well.
The whole thing with self-evaluations, like, again, where we don't do that self-reflection regularly. And so every time we do it, the purpose ends up being to defend yourself. The purpose is all about, like, let me prove myself and prove my value to my manager. And I only get this one shot because I only get to do this once a year. It sets it up for this high pressure thing that also takes a lot of energy and effort because we're not comfortable doing it. We're not used to doing it. And it can get a little bit more potentially less targeted, less direct, less relevant. And because there's so much that is like at stake with your self-evaluation, it feels like there's so much at stake. It could stray, things could get embellished. And then you're not setting yourself up for success, but you have no other option. It'd be wild to not do those things. And so if giving self-reflections was something you could do more regularly, like, this is me keeping the drumbeat to my manager about what I'm doing, so I make sure I don't get too far off track, so I can hold them accountable for keeping me on track. This is their job to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And if that activity of sharing that self-reflection became more part of like the regular conversation, you can build up more trust. And like, in giving and receiving that feedback, you can build up more trust, and it all becomes less scary. And it feels like it can tackle power dynamics. They can tackle trust and clarity, and that thing you're talking about of like this fear of like, am I doing the right thing? I don't know. like the mental and emotional stress could go away if we actually invest more in those conversations rather than less. Take the weight off of them. So and as a manager, I really love and value getting those self-reflections. I call them self-reflections instead, but in the real world, they're assessments or self-reviews. And it really helps because I'm not in all the rooms. I don't want to be in all the rooms. That means I'm micromanaging if I'm everywhere. So I better not know everything. But then if I don't know everything, I can't help the person. And I can't catch if things are sort of like getting off track. So I rely on those self-reflections. And if I only get that once a year, how am I set up to support this person the rest of the year? It's really tough. And so I think that like that part of the conversation, I would love to, like I sort of can envision a whole different world where feedback is a two-way street.
Yes.
And it's not just two-way in that like I'm getting to give to my manager is giving to me, or me to my peers, but also like I get to ask for it in both directions. Like I get to like, here's what I'm thinking. Are we on the same page with this thing? And letting that be expected and less scary and less heavy duty. Just gets easier. It's just like, oh, this is just part of how we talk. Now I don't have to be scared. I don't have to wonder. I don't have to fill in the blanks about how I'm doing in my head because we had the conversations. It's so much easier because I'm way meaner than any manager I've ever had. Like there's the stories I tell myself about how I'm doing have never come close to what I've heard from my manager. And even if my manager's given me like, the like soft hedging version of life, it's still like from how many issues I might tell myself to how many issues they're actually telling me. If their truth is here, it's still not here.
Yeah. It's like a self jail. I think it feels like one of those things where you can do that to yourself. Like I am harder on myself than other people are, but you have that. And then you could be focusing on the completely wrong thing, right? Like you are putting all this energy and effort towards it. And yet that's not even the thing that you're supposed to be working on in the first place.
Yeah.
Sorry
about all the dog barking in the background.
It's really not that loud.
Okay, good.
I mean, you have a dog. I made the mistake of having my dog watching a video last night, and then my dog started crying and can't hear. One can't hear and just feels vibration. So then everybody starts barking, and that's awesome.
Oh my God.
Especially in the middle of the night. One of the things that I think is really important to go over, what would I like to automate? My dogs not barking in the middle of the night.
Unlocking the door for my kid who's locked out.
Right. Yeah, that.
That's why the dog's barking, is she's locked out.
Oh, did it? That happens, or the mailman comes. I feel like managers don't manage very well. It's one of the things that I've talked about in the past where it's like, okay, we expect a lot more from our managers. And so even though I say, we all have to carry a bag, I'm really saying like we all have work to do on top of whatever job, and people are pulling back, and it can feel overwhelming that we have to do everything, but really it goes back to what you're saying. We just need to know what we're responsible for and what the outcome is going to be. There's so many times that I've talked to people who have said things like, oh, I'm supposed to schedule meetings. I'm a meeting scheduler. So I'm going to schedule 35 meetings. And then the question is, what is the result of those meetings? Did you get any sales from those meetings? And it's like, I don't know, because I'm only counting the number of meetings and not looking at sales. I try to measure all of those things to document. But it's also important that you're documenting along the way. If you only get that one chance a year so that you can take that hour to speak about the right things. And I think managers want to manage in that moment, like they can in that moment, because this is the time that I'm going to sit down with Tacita and we're going to go over this big list. But I can appreciate that we will have a tool where people can start thinking about what they want to tell their boss so they don't waste the time. Again, telling them about things that aren't as important. I can go back and regret so many times that I've given a self-reflection and it did not matter. And we need to share those things, because in the beginning of the career versus now, I've learned so much that I used to, and I see this a lot, try to impress my boss, like, oh, I'm doing all of these really great things, but it wasn't going to matter, wasn't going to get me a raise, because the company was not going to give any raises at all whatsoever. It didn't matter how good it was, what I liked, and I didn't know how to, I would be excited about something, but it also could reflect that the job that I was supposed to do wasn't getting done, or something else got in the way. And so I didn't know how to communicate about myself. And so I'm glad that there's going to be a tool around that, but also it's just good to keep a log for yourself of when you don't, that is not the end all of your success, is what your boss says. You can sit and be proud too.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is like, you can be your own coach. You can look at your own growth. The thing you said about logging is such like taking those notes. So you, just like your manager can have recency bias if they only stop once a year, even 2 times a year to think about your review. We ourselves have recency bias when we're reflecting on ourselves. So it's like, when it comes to that self-review time, like, what do you put in it? What did I even do? How do you even remember that stuff? Like, you want to be capturing this history, this log of like, here's a moment I saw someone do something awesome. Here's a moment I reflected on myself doing something awesome. Here's a moment like, oh man, I look back on that and could have done better. And you have that log, you can see patterns, you can see growth, you can have things to speak to, and you can look over history, you can look over time. You can't do that if you're just like running on it, like, you know, everything is just totally ephemeral and you have no sort of tracking of what's been going on, what you've been doing, or what the person you're giving feedback to has been doing. So you need to capture those things as roughly as you need, but just like dump it somewhere so that you can actually act on it. You can pull out the trends and insights from it.
I love that. Well, I'm about to ask you a question about Textio, and I know that you're deeper, as deep as I am. As the CTO, you're way deeper, because you're all in the messy stuff, like where the sausage is made. What is something that you wish people knew about Textio that you don't think is either you don't see it all the time, or maybe they don't know? What is something you wish that they knew about the product? Besides wanting everybody to know your work bestie. Hi. What do you wish people knew?
So one of the things that I'm just most impressed with is how we build the software, how we question what we're building, how we look for ways that it could have unintended impact, especially when it comes to our AI. The amount of effort that goes into measuring and monitoring the bias in our AI, into making sure that we're mitigating any issues by having a bunch of different lived experiences in the room, evaluating and deciding on things together. You don't see that everywhere. Like, other companies have been at building AI, like that's not how it happens. And we really invest in that in a way that has demonstrable impact on what the experience is with our AI. It's different, right? It sounds more human because it's built by humans who are caring about humans. It is not, there's controls in place to really reduce the risks. And we do, like, it takes extra effort. It's not it's not quick fixes. It takes diligence. It takes ongoing monitoring and measuring. It takes a lot of people in the room to look at things and check each other's work. And I just think that's such a critical and important thing, especially given the direction of AI today and the potential for harm and negative impact. It's just, I feel really proud of it. It's the thing I'm most excited about, being a part of this group and a part of what we're doing and the change we're making, because I can trust the AI that's at the core.
You know what else you did? You got all loud. You sat up straight. You started.
I did. Yeah, get me all pumped up.
All political and stuff. That's
Okay,
good.
there's the other thing I would say, which is
I'm taking notes.
this is more just about using the software itself. You can, it's pretty flexible, right? So like I track my notes and stuff, like my thoughts in the system. And it's not always that I'm going to like copy and paste this feedback and give it to someone somewhere, or like deliver and share it in some official thing. But it's really helpful for me because my thoughts are coming out more actionable and clear. So it's not only helpful in delivering, like sharing feedback with someone, it's also helpful for me when I want to go back and reflect on something later on. Because maybe it's not something I need to talk about and I don't need to like spend time in this thing. But now I've tracked it. Now, oh, well, 4 times I've had comments in this kind of area. Maybe now it has become a pattern. So it's not a one-off. I should talk to this person about this thing. And so you can use it not just for for sort of the tools for manager side of the world. You can use it not just for those moments where you're like, at 3:45 p.m. today, I'm going to be sharing feedback with this person. You can just use it for yourself and really like capturing the things you need to capture and getting back to them quickly and easily and understanding your own thoughts because they've been articulated clearly. So there's just like a use that like we definitely like people can look at our software and think, well, it's used for this one thing. And that's the scenario of like giving feedback during a performance recycle or something. And it's not that. You can use it much more broadly.
I love AI built by people who care about people. Done. Full marketing campaign. Should we get marketing on the phone? That was great. I love that. But I also agree. I mean, when we first started talking about it, it was like performance feedback, the once a year annual review. But feedback is more than that. I'm laughing. We have a meeting later this afternoon because we're coworkers and we're giving feedback. And I was like, I didn't use our tool to write the feedback. I wonder if it's wrong. And I want to put all the feedback in it to be like, now let's see what Textio thinks about our feedback, because it is, something that I didn't think about because it is feedback. There's more feedback than just a performance review or a direct report or those types of things. And we also forgot, I love that we'll have it for self-reviews, but I imagine a lot of people are going to use that to manage up.
Totally.
Talk to their
Totally.
boss.
The managing that piece is a big thing that we're thinking about and talking about how to help with that process. I mean, the terminology managing up makes me a little bit throw up inside, but
right.
It is a real thing. And I have learned way too late in my own career about the importance of that. And so that's an area we're actually really excited to support people in because it is high impact.
You need to do it quick because trust me, all 2 million of your reports will all start doing it. They'll be like, oh, I'm gonna use it.
Which helps me, right? I constantly have that help me help you thing in my mind of like, I would love as a manager, I would love that because it would better set me up and position me to support my team. And it would help my team have a better experience because they're getting more support from me and making sure they're seen and all the things. And we're all on the same page and there's no surprises and lovely world that we could live in. So we're going to build it.
I love that. I think what I would like for people to know is that it is AI based. That's something, and that one of the benefits of being here is knowing that, like, not being biased, like we build it into everything that we do. We're constantly looking at iterating, and we will continue to do that. It doesn't have to be a tool to reduce bias to think that we're not going to reduce bias in it.
Absolutely.
Because
absolutely.
I don't think I see a lot of different tools, especially in the TA space where I am, that claim to reduce bias over here, but then they don't reduce bias in another part of the same platform. So which is it? And you could tell, like, it's not just a normal part of the everyday process. And that's annoying.
Yep.
That you still get credit for this one piece and you're not pushing to make the world of work a better place.
You get credit for thinking about it and talking about it. And like you're always talking about, like, that it can't be vaporware on top.
Right.
It's not wrapping paper on your product.
Right.
It has to be at the core of your team. It has to
Right.
be the core of how you operate. And it's not just mitigating bias in the actual words you've written. When you're using a system like this that helps you interact with everybody on your team, you're going to start equalizing how you're interacting with people.
Yes.
And so we're actually combating bias by also helping you, like, have those. We know all the numbers of, like, hey, if that person, if, like, my direct report doesn't look like me, I have a much higher chance of not communicating with them directly. And when you have a system in place that unblocks that, you're going to combat whatever biases I might be bringing to the table that I don't even know about. And it's not just because of the words I'm using, but who I'm talking to and how easily and effortlessly I can now actually give the feedback that everybody on my team needs. So everybody gets lifted up, not just a few.
Yeah. That's like we're leveling the playing field so that we can actually get things done. And I've said it over and over again. We are different. We live in different worlds. We have different backgrounds. I can't give you the feeling that what it feels of being in work in fear for me. I can just tell you the relief. And it took me years later when we were young, that the movie Waiting to Exhale, like I didn't understand the title of what that was until much later, of being safe and feeling safe, of knowing, like, I didn't realize I've been holding my breath for 20 years. Like I've been living in fear for
Right.
all of that time. And I'm appreciative of the tools that we're building, and I'm excited to be a part of making the world of work a better place and making people, calm and be able to just do their job.
Yeah. Yes. Wild concept.
Anything else you want to tell our millions of fans, Textio fans that are here today?
Be gentle on yourselves out there.
Okay, I love that. Well, I'm going to put in the chat below a link so that you can try Textio if you haven't yet.
Come try it out and reach out to us. Connect on LinkedIn. Have conversations. Like, I'm ready to geek out with anybody about what communication is like in the workplace, what feedback is like in the workplace, what getting development looks like and doesn't look like in the workplace. So if you want to geek out with me, if you want to give me feedback on your experiences so we can build software that addresses the challenges you face, have at it.
Give Tacita
Morway.
feedback about the product that helps with the feedback.
Yes.
And if you're here on LinkedIn, maybe you'll be at Talent Connect in Phoenix. And if you are, you'll get to see us, and we'll be really excited to chat with you. So thank you again to our millions of fans. Thanks, Tacita.